Good day, Deep and Word family. Welcome to day 250 of our Bible study review. Today we're going through chapters 32 through 34 of the book of Job. Now, in yesterday's reading, Job rested his case. He is done speaking to his friends, aka prosecutors, aka accusers. But in today's reading, we're going to see that there's a turn of events. There's a young man who was a bystander listening this entire time, and we see that this serves as a buffer before the Almighty shows up on the scene. Let's open up in chapter 32, starting from verse 1. It says, "Now these three men, Job's so-called friends, they no longer had an answer for Job because he was righteous in his own eyes." And it says that the wrath of Elihu the Buzite burned against Job. His wrath burned because he declared himself right rather than Elohim declaring him right. Verse 3, it says, "And against his three friends his wrath burned because they had found no answer and pronounced Elohim wicked. And because they were years older than Elihu waited to speak to Job." So Elihu is a young man, and he did not want to join the conversation because he was respecting his elders. He was listening to see if they had something wise to say. And so now he steps up and he says, "I am young in years and you are aged. Therefore, I was afraid to let you know my opinion. I said days should speak and many years should teach wisdom. But truly, it is the spirit in man and the breath of El Shaddai that gives him understanding. The multitude are not wise, nor do the aged understand right ruling. Therefore, I have said, now listen to me, and let me make my opinion known to you." So again, this young man is sitting on the sidelines and he's listening and he's trying to see if he can find wisdom from these older men. And he's saying basically, "I found none." Let's pick up in verse 17. Elihu says, "Let me answer on my part, and let me also make my opinion known. For I am filled with words. The spirit within me presses me. See, within me it is like wine not opened. It shall burst forth like new wineskins." He's saying, I have been sitting patiently, and I'm bursting to tell you what the Spirit is speaking through me. He says, "Let me speak so that I may find relief. Let me open my lips and answer. Please let me not show partiality to anyone, nor let me flatter any man. For I do not know how to flatter, lest my Maker should soon take me away." So he opens up in chapter 32 with, look, I'm not going to beat around the bush. I was literally hoping to hear something wise come out of the aged men's mouths. He goes, but I heard none. And so I'm not going to come to you with flattering. I'm not going to come to you and buffer what I have to say. And now that Elihu has cleared the air and got that off of his chest, he turns his attention to Job first. And these are the words that he has to speak to him. Let's start reading from verses 1 through 6. And he says, "And yet, O Job, please hear my speech and listen to all of my words. See, please, I shall open my mouth and my tongue shall speak in my mouth. My words are from the uprightness of my heart. My lips shall speak knowledge clearly. The Ruach of El, or the Spirit of God, has made me, and the breath of El Shaddai gives me life. If you are able to, answer me. Put yourself in order before me. Take your stand." Courtroom language, okay? He says, "See, I am like you before El as well. I too have been formed out of clay." Let's pick up in verses 7 through 10. He says, "See, no fear of me should alarm you." He's like, I'm just like you. I'm no higher than you. He goes, there should be no pressure on you concerning me. He says, "But you have spoken in my hearing, and the sound of words I have heard. I am clear without transgression. I am innocent, and I have no wickedness." He goes, I have heard these words from your mouth. And he says, no man can declare himself righteous before the judge. He says, see, he finds occasions against me, and he counts me as his enemy. He says, these are your words against the Almighty Judge. You are speaking falsely, and you are speaking unfavorable words about the judge concerning what is unfolded in your life. So this is the rebuke of Elihu, starting in verse 12. This is what he has to say to Job. He says, "See, in this you have not been righteous. Let me answer you. Elohim is greater than man. Why then have you complained against him? Because he does not answer all of his matters? For El speaks once or twice, and one does not notice it. In a dream and in a vision of the night, when deep sleep falls upon men while slumbering on a bed, then he opens up the ears of men and seals their instruction, to turn man away from works and to conceal pride from man. He keeps back his being from the pit and his life from passing away from the sword." So Elihu is basically saying, look, he speaks to us in ways that man would understand. He speaks to us through night visions. He speaks to us through our dreams. And maybe you're not hearing him. Maybe you're not recognizing the instruction that he's giving you. Now let's pick up in verse 23, because Elihu is alluding to something, and it's very beautiful. He says, "If there is a messenger for him, a mediator, one among 1,000 to show man his straightness." There is a mediator, and his name is Yeshua. And so we see that Elihu is saying, if there is a mediator who can fill this gap and help men to be righteous, or help men to stand righteous before the Father, he says, then he shows favor to him and says, "Release him from going down to the pit. I have found an atonement." Again, we know that this is our Messiah, and not that we have any righteousness of our own. We see that the Father expresses mercy through the sacrifice of his Son. Now his Son washes our slate clean, and we have the opportunity to live from spirit so that we can do works of righteousness. But there was nothing that we could do before Christ that could have us standing in a right standing with the Father. But there is an atonement for men, and it is Yeshua. He's the only way. There's no other. There's nothing that you can do that would impress the Father. There's nothing that you could do to pay him back for the sin stains that are on your life. He provides the sacrifice, and then you give up your life to live from spirit. All right, let's pick up in verse 25. It says, "Let his flesh become fresher than a child's. Let him return to the days of his youth." This is what Job desires. As we know from reading previously, he was thinking back on the days when he was well respected, thinking back on the days when people loved him because he covered his brethren. And right now, Job's flesh is torn apart. He looks a hot mess. And so Elihu is saying, let the mediator come and bring back everything that you have lost. Let him make your flesh like the flesh of a baby. And he says in verse 26, he prays to Elohim and he accepts him and he sees his face with joy and he restores to man his righteousness. Verse 28, he says, "He has redeemed my being from going down to the pit, and my life sees the light." See, El does all these things twice, 3 times with a man, to bring back his being from the pit, to be enlightened with the light of the living. Pay attention, Job. Listen to me and keep silent and let me speak. If there are words, answer me. Speak, for I desire to declare you right. If not, listen to me, keep silent, and let me teach you wisdom. So Elihu is saying, look, the Father sends his counsel in many ways, and he does not destroy without warning. He gives you chance after chance after chance to redeem you and bring you to life. Now, we don't know if Elihu knew who Job was before all of this tragedy, but he desires to declare this man right. And so as we walk into chapter 34, now we see that his attention is on his so-called friends. Now he has a strong rebuke for them. Let's pick up in verse 2 and see what Elihu has to say to Job's fake friends, to his accusers. He says, "Hear my words, you wise men. Give ear to me, you who have knowledge. For the ear tries words as the palate tastes food." Down to verse 5. "For Job has said, I am righteous, but El has taken away my right." In verse 7, he says, What man is like Job, who drinks mocking like water, who goes in company with workers of wickedness and walks with the men of wickedness? He's saying, who else could take all of the beatings of Job, that even his friends come to mock him and accuse him? Verse 9, Elihu says, for he has said, it does not profit a man that he takes delight in Elohim. Now he's criticizing their words that they have spoken. And he says, therefore listen to me, you men of heart. Far be it from El to do wickedly, and from El Shaddai to commit unrighteousness, for he repays man for his work that he has done. And he makes man to find a reward according to his path. The truth is, El does not do wickedly, and El Shaddai does not twist right ruling. Who has assigned to him the earth, and who has laid out all of the world? He says, who has done this other than God Almighty? And he says, if he applies his heart to him, should he gather to himself his spirit and his breath? He says, so if he has given his image and his spirit and his wisdom unto man, is it not righteous for him to then take back what is his? Let's pick up in verse 23. This young man is pretty wise. He says, for he appoints a man no stated time to appear before El in right ruling, meaning your life is not promised to you tomorrow. He doesn't say this will be the number of your days. So, you can live ratchet all you want to, just so long as you got it right before this one day. No, any day could be the day that you stand before him in judgment. So today is the day of salvation. Don't play with your eternity. Let's pick up in verse 31. He says, for who has said to El, I have taken away, I do not act corruptly? There is no man who says, I can take away, right? Or I can make atonement for all of the wrongs that I have done before him. There's only one, and that's the Son of the living God. That's Yeshua HaMashiach. No one else can say that. No one else can claim to be righteous before the Father. Let's go down to verse 34. He says, let men of heart say to me, and a wise man who listens to me. Job does not speak with knowledge, and his words are without wisdom. Would that Job be tried to the end, since his answers are like those of a wicked man? For he adds rebellion to his sin. He claps among us, and he multiplies his words against El. So yes, Elihu rebukes Job, and he rebukes his friends as well. And he says, if you are men of heart, meaning if you are men of the righteousness of El, he says, answer me then. This young man is challenging them with their self-righteousness and with their so-called wisdom to judge their friend. And he rebukes Job because in his bitterness, he is speaking characteristics that are not true of the judge. Well, Deep in Word family, this young man has a lot of fire, but he's not done yet. Tomorrow we will finish out with what this young man has to say. And then we'll be closer and closer to the closing of Job's case. But we're not quite there yet. So I will see you tomorrow. Until then, Yah bless.